Who's going to take these jobs in farms and factories after Brexit?
My sisters all voted Remain and my parents voted Leave.
Britain was Britain before there was the EU.
The pound has already dropped to the lowest it has ever been.
I'm Welsh. Wales primarily voted Leave, which disappoints me massively.
Why are British people upset about NHS?
British people are fundamentally quite lazy.
They're suffering and thinking about relocating to other places.
Actually, this country is run by other people from other countries. That's what's going to keep this going.
Hi YouTube, what's up? My name is Zane and this is Provocative TV. Tonight I will hit the streets of London and I will find out what people think about Brexit. And before we get started, press like to this video and subscribe to our channel because we have a lot of stuff that we want to show you. And also let us know and write the comment what in your opinion we should ask to Londoners next time. Okay, let's get started.
I'm Susie and I'm from London. I was born in Hampshire, which is a town outside of London. I'm a TV producer.
Who voted to leave? Who were these people and why they voted to leave?
I think it was an older generation. Well, actually, my parents voted to leave, so it kind of split our family, and not in a dramatic way, but just like in a split decision because all us kids, my sisters all voted Remain, and my parents voted Leave. And their reasons for voting Leave is that they feel like we are better off on our own and they want to go back to the old. It's a nostalgic view of what it used to be before the EU, before we joined the EU, and I think like that's just not, you can't base something that happened in the past on what's happening now. It's a completely different there's a lot of the older generation who voted Leave, I imagine, and all the people that are suffering, so all the kind of people that the government have currently forgotten about and are poorer and for expression, they were I think they were shown something like, oh, this brave new world, and they decided, oh, we'll vote for that, not really knowing what they were voting for, and it's turned out the way it has.
My name is Yunus.
Ceren.
We are from Turkey. I'm working for Heinz, ketchup mayo company. As far as I know, old people living in the country, they said no because of their ancestors. I mean, because they are nationalists, that's why maybe.
I'm Ben and I'm from London.
I'm Tim from Wales.
Ron Buzzard from Wellington.
I'm a mortgage advisor.
Mortgage broker.
Mortgage broker. Wales.
I'm Welsh. Wales primarily voted Leave, which disappoints me massively because as a Welshman I feel very strongly against it. However, cool. I think it's different with you. I live in London. It's a much more multicultural world anyway. Maybe we are more accepting of it. I don't know.
They were told, oh, borders, we're going to have border control, all this sort of stuff, but I just think that's the problem. They haven't realised that actually this country is run by other people from other countries, and ultimately that's what's going to keep this going. And I think that's the thing. And a lot of people focus on immigrants and all this sort of stuff, and the problem is they've misinformed. That's what I believe it is.
Grace from New Zealand. I run my own business, property management. I can understand both sides of the argument, but Britain was Britain before there was the EU. There's no reason that Britain and the rest of the countries in the EU can't work together without being so closely tied. Britain needs to make its own rules. It's a sovereign nation, but work cooperatively with other countries. I think the economic and political situation in countries like Italy and France proves that people aren't happy with the current form of the EU, and you know, the EU probably needs some modification.
Who's going to take these jobs in farms and factories after Brexit, what do you think?
No one, and there's a reason why we have to welcome people, because ultimately a lot of people are doing jobs that the British people, as we are, don't actually want to do. There's a market of jobs there which will become available if people are forced out of Britain, and I don't think they're going to be filled by British people. Don't ask me why, because I couldn't tell you why people don't want to do the job, but there's a reason, and there is availability for it, and I fully welcome people outside of the UK to come and work in my country.
Well, here's the thing: is that British people are fundamentally quite lazy. So like all these like jobs that like will be that people who aren't from here that will come to this country and struggle to get jobs now, I don't know who's gonna, like, no, it's just they do a better job of it and they come over and they're like wanting to work, and that's the thing, there's a lot of people that are here that are seeking asylum and they're willing to put the work in and want to work, and it's just, yeah, it's just that they're all going to suffer as well, I think, and therefore we will, and our economy will.
Britain's not the only country with problems getting people, getting employees, getting staff. It's not an issue to do with the EU, it's just an issue with economies that are growing and trying to find people. Australia and New Zealand have the same issues of finding people. We can't recruit. We've got low unemployment. We need people. We're not tied to the EU. It's completely irrelevant.
Where these people should go after Brexit?
Go find work and go. You know, there's jobs there. There's no reason why people can't work. But at the same time, you've got to train your own young people within your own country to fill these jobs. You know, there's a lot of people, on unemployment benefits and things who would probably love to work, but you've got to skill them, you've got to train them and give them the skills and give them the incentive, rather than, bringing in labour that's cheap.
My name's Dominic, I'm from London. I'm an actor. Who's going to take these jobs? I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully the best people for the jobs, hopefully the people who can do the best job in those positions.
I'm Rafi from Kent.
I'm Kate, I'm also from Kent.
I'm studying digital media and communication.
I'm at uni, I study business management, marketing and French. To be honest, I think it'd be very difficult for them to hire more people because of Brexit. I mean, because of Brexit is already capping people coming into our country, because there's a specific amount now that is being regulated, and for them to hire more labourers to work, there's kind of a small conflict between people who want to be hired and people that's wanting to stay in the EU. So I feel like it's kind of difficult for them to hire just anyone.
If there is going to be Brexit, how do you think the global companies that are based in the UK are going to deal with the implications?
Who knows what's going to happen, but I think it's definitely going to be harder. I think it's a trust thing as well. All these companies that usually deal with us, and it's quite an easy passage, especially in Europe, to go. A lot of head offices are in Amsterdam and and I think they're going to lose trust in what's happened, because they know ultimately it's a bad decision. And it's like in America when Trump was made president, there was a massive the rest of the world were like, what? So suddenly there's a lack of confidence and trust in us as a nation. I think that's going to happen for sure, and all these global companies will we're not going to be that desirable, I imagine. It's going to be harder to travel, harder to do deals, harder to buy, harder to import, export.
Most of them won't leave London. I mean, during the campaign for the vote, there was so many threats of companies leaving and relocating, and mostly hasn't happened. Companies aren't going to go. I mean, look around you at London, it's packed full of people, it's packed full of businesses, people want to be here. Companies aren't just going to pack up and leave. Yes, it might be tough, but I think again overall in the long run it will all work out.
Well, yeah, no, that's tricky because we're sort of looking at the EU as trade routes all over the world, and you expand via the European Union, and I don't know, it's very tricky. I think businesses are probably going to suffer, especially the small businesses, which we've started seeing more and more, that outsource to different places in the European Union, and then because we're not part of the European Union, they're going to get taxed heavier and going to have to resource to other places. So unfortunately it's looking like the small businesses are going to suffer the worst, which is terrible. Like some of my favorite small businesses in the world is a small town that I grew up in, and they're suffering and thinking about relocating to other places, and I think that's a real problem. I think that's a real shame.
I think it's going to be a bit of a barrier of trade. I think they're going to try and work out a solution, but ultimately it's going to be very different to what they're currently used to. So they're going to have to try and adapt to it. It's going to take time. It's going to take money to try and work it all out. And ultimately, like I said, and as my dear friend here said, if it is the case they can't get the workers to do it, that's going to be the biggest problem. Is trying to get someone to do that job for them at the competitive rate that someone else is going to be asking for it. And I think there's going to be an issue, but ultimately it's going to be, if it goes through, wait and see what happens, see what people are going to want to do that, and it's going to be very difficult.
All citizens from the EU who work, they pay tax to the government. So why are British people upset about NHS?
My prediction is, since people from the European Union are working in hospitality business, in rural areas, maybe for the low profile and medium level jobs, there are people coming from abroad, but in terms of making the money in the pool for NHS and this kind of social services, it's not affecting the same ways. How to say, pyramid is going, the lower side is going bigger and the upper side is going low.
I think the main reason for being upset about the NHS is not enough. We all pay our taxes and that goes towards the NHS, but I don't think enough is, I think wages is a problem with wages. I don't think enough goes into the NHS. You know, and it's one of those things where we're really, really lucky to have it, and if something happens, we should be protecting it. But anyone who pays anyone who comes to this country, and if they're not from here and they pay their taxes and they do work and pay their tax, they have just as much right to the NHS as people who are born here.
There's a strain on the health system in the UK, there's a strain on the health system in a lot of countries, and a lot of it is due to migration. And unfortunately, you know, investment hasn't been made in public health systems to cope with the growing population. I don't think that's got anything to do with citizens from any particular country. If the government allows people to migrate to, you know, a country, then you have to invest in the infrastructure and in order to cope with the capacity, you have to train staff, you have to have doctors and nurses, you've got to train these people. You know, you've got to have the facilities to cope with the growing population. So I think to some degree immigrants have become a bit of a scapegoat, but I think it's a case more of the government not investing in the infrastructure and the resources to cope with the growing population. My
belief that we should be remaining and that we should welcome people from the EU within the country, because it is ultimately the NHS's problem is cuts against the government towards the NHS. Nothing wrong with the people who are working in the NHS, it's the fact they don't have the funding for it. And people from the EU and outside, actually a lot of people outside of the EU, immigrants coming through, are best doctors, and there's no reason why we shouldn't let them through if they are more than qualified to treat me for the problems that may occur in the future.
Do you think that the pound is going to be affected further?
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure. Any like economical, political climate is going to affect the currency of that country in some way. So yeah, I'm sure at some point it's going to be affected, yeah. I don't know if it's going to be positive or negative, but I know it's going to be affected, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's going to crash. I think there's going to be a big, whatever happens, I mean the pound's already decreasing in value, I think, and I think there's going to be a big old crash, and the economy is going to suffer a lot when whatever happens. It's already suffering, but it's going to suffer even more, I think. I think that's definitely going to be affected, yeah.
Yes, I think the pound will suffer very, very quickly, as it did when the Brexit vote happened. The pound dropped almost instantaneously, but it recovered, and it will recover again. And I think I work in the finance, the property market. It will take a hit, but I think for a short period of time. I think things, yes, whichever way it goes, there needs to be some clarity in terms of what's going to happen.
Who knows? If we get a no deal, pound will drop, and Bank of England will step in. If we get, well, what deal will we get, and then where will it land up?
Yeah, largely. So like, I think the euro is going to take over, basically. It's going to be more worth than the pound. I think the pound will decrease because it loses kind of value. So yeah, I think it will be decreased though.
Yeah, I mean, ever since like the Brexit vote, the pound has already dropped to the lowest it has ever been. And I think that's like so bad for like businesses in the UK, because we rely on the pound being like the strongest from other countries. And I think now we're just like, you know, fluctuating up and down, and I think in the future, I think it's just not gonna like cost that much. I think the value has definitely gone down now, so